Here we go. George Awad.
Present.
Bob Riggs.
Present.
Brian Kane.
Here.
Don Castellucci.
Present.
Christine Lester. Charlie Olmsted. Jody Cooley.
Here.
Eric Knowles.
Here.
Fran Bailey.
Here.
Okay. Irene Horvath. Horvat.
Hi, present.
Thank you.
It's Irina for the record.
Irina. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Jack Apri. Or RP.
Here.
Sorry.
Here.
John Conklin.
Here.
Jenny Ceccarelli.
Present.
Jim French.
Here.
John Schumacher.
Here.
Jim Tornator.
Present.
Lynn Landon.
Here.
Maureen Abbott.
Present.
Kirk Martin.
Here. Here.
Lori Morgan.
Here.
Sharon Knoll. Patrick Osterhout.
Present.
Pam Pringle.
Present.
Ryan Doherty.
Present.
Carolyn Galatzan. How'd I do?
I don't know if she's on.
Okay. No, okay. Sabrina Slater.
Here, and just so you know, in the chat, Christine Lester wrote that she's here and had a
Okay.
microphone.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, I see that.
Ted Hardenstein.
Here.
All right. Wendy Post.
I saw her. I know she's here.
Here.
Okay. Somebody from WEBO?
Nope.
All right. Somebody from the Daily Review, Morning Times.
I can represent them.
Who's that?
Wendy Post.
Oh, hi, Wendy. Okay,
Hi.
so you'll be both, huh? All right. All right. And Sheriff Howard?
Here.
Martha Sauerbry?
Here.
Joan Davis? Peter DeWind?
Oops.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to mute everybody.
And you're going to leave. Okay.
Yeah, I'll unmute you personally. There we go. All right.
Can you hear me now?
I sure can. Anybody besides you and Jenny right now?
The sheriff will be shortly.
Okay, I'll go ahead and unmute him right now then.
So I'm going to say all that again. Thank you for joining. Thank you for participating in our police reform and reinvention collaborative. Again, for those of you that might not understand what this is, back in the summer, the governor was extremely concerned about policing in New York State. And so he, by executive order, and has required all municipalities that have police departments to go through this exercise. And I'm going to show you the book that the governor sent for us as a guideline. So I can tell you that his direction has been specific. and we have followed the rules and regulations. And so this is part of what we're required to do. In September this year, we began working on the police reform, and we put a plan together. And I asked a friend, Jenny Ceccarelli, a community member, to participate. And so she is on the call tonight, and she's going to help me with this meeting. And I appreciate you, Jenny. She is the IDA board director, but she's also a community member, former village board member, and very active and concerned. So I thank her for that. We also had a survey that we put out earlier in November, and we sent that out to the community via SurveyMonkey. And we had a staff member from Economic Development and Planning, Megan Griffith, and she helped us with that. And we had an excellent response, over 500 responses on that. And a lot of the questions that we're going to bring forth tonight are from that survey. So this again is all centered around comments, concerns that community members may have. So I guess what we're going to begin with questions. So I'm going to pose the questions to the sheriff. Jenny and I will, and he'll have an opportunity to answer the questions and share information that many of you may be surprised to learn about, good things, practices that he has been doing. So I guess I will open again. So again, thank you to everyone. And Jenny, if you want to begin the questions, go ahead.
I would be delighted to do that. Thank you, Marty. Good evening, Sheriff. Thanks for
Good evening.
joining us this evening.
Good evening.
The first question I have for you is kind of a series of three, but they're all related in context. How often do you review and update your policies? Do they comply with state regulations? And how often is your department audited?
Well, first, I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. This is a big deal for us. And going to your question, Jenny, about policies, I have to explain to everybody that my office, the sheriff's office as a whole, basically I have 4 divisions. I have the road patrol, which I'm sure everybody is aware of. Those are the men and women out on the patrol cars. I have our civil department, our 911 center, and my correction facility, the jail. So those are the 4 basic parts of my office. The state has a program called accreditation. I was the 5th county in the state to be 100% accredited. And what accreditation does for us is it shows the state that we are completely compliant with all the policies, rules, and regulations that the state puts down on law enforcement. We are inspected. We have to be reaccredited every 5 years. And in doing so, what happens is the state will send 3 to 5 people down to my office, and they stay as long as they feel is necessary, usually between 3 to 5 days. They stay here and go through all my files. They talk to my employees. They question my employees. They test them basically on the rules and regulations for the department. Now, in the law enforcement side of things, in the road patrol, the accreditation, we have about 100 standards, we call, which are all policies, such as I'm sure you've heard the state, Albany put out no more chokeholds for law enforcement. I've been around for a long time, so when I went to my basic school and training, they taught us how to do chokeholds. Well, now they don't want us to do chokeholds, and that's part of our policy now. So we had to update our policy immediately when that came out, and it is updated. I have a deputy who is assigned to those policies, and that's about, I'd say about 85%, 80 to 85% of his job is to update and keep those policies going, because it also involves training and a slew of other things that in accreditation. So we are up to date in all the policies. Every time something comes down, we update, we research, we talk to the other counties, and we update our policies, and then we have the training followed up with the deputies or corrections officers, whoever it pertains to. But there are about 100 policies that we do, and some of them what we call critical standard policies, such as background investigations or records management. Those types of things are critical standards that really have to be looked at. Rules of conduct, use of force, those are all critical standards that have to be up. So, and then every year we have to submit things to the state showing them that we're keeping up on our accreditation. Now, this is for all 4 divisions, not just road patrol. So it's a lot of work in each division to keep accredited. It's a big task. It really is to stay accredited. But we are up 100% on all our policies. I mean, and I always told the state or the Commission of Corrections that comes down once a year to spend 4 or 5 days here. We are an open book. Come anytime you want and take a look. I have no problems, day or night.
Okay,
Thank you, Sheriff.
so I get the
Marty,
second,
do you have a,
I have
go
I
ahead.
have the second question, but unfortunately, Sheriff, you already answered it. Because I was gonna ask you about chokeholds, but you already answered.
And I can explain. I can explain a little bit about the chokeholds.
Good.
Chokeholds. It's funny because people believe chokeholds are banned completely, and they are not. Under Article 35, the use of deadly physical force, chokeholds falls under that. It's like pulling your gun on somebody and shooting at somebody. So you can actually use a chokehold on a person if it falls under the Article 35 on the use of deadly physical force. So if somebody was, I don't know what circumstance it would fall under, to tell you the truth, but if I was choking somebody out myself, trying to kill them, and the only way the officer could get me off was to choke me and pull me back, they would be able to do that. But that would have to fall, it would fall under the Article 35 of deadly physical force. And I could talk about use of force if you want. When we use any type of use of force, if we lay hands on anybody, we have a complete policy about that, where any deputy that's on the scene has a form they have to fill out. It then goes to their supervisor, and then it goes up the chain through the lieutenant, the captain, the undersheriff, and then to me for approval and review. And then I give it to my senior investigator, who then reports it to the state. So anytime, any use of force, and I'm not talking about, where we're using, pepper spray or using a baton or anything, but if I have to wrestle you to the ground, that's a use of force. We have to report that.
Okay. You gotta wait, Wendy. Write it down. You gotta wait. Okay, Jenny, back to you.
And the next question, Sheriff, what about body cameras?
I think they're
Talk
great.
a little about that.
I like body cameras. I think they protect the officer. The problem with body cameras is the expense. The body camera itself is not so much. I mean, we've had body cameras here that we've contacted companies and for 30-day usage to try them out. They're not bad, expense-wise to buy the camera. The problem comes in the storage of the data. It's so expensive. It's terribly expensive. And, when I've got, 30 people wearing cameras all the time and 8 hours of data, it just got so expensive. We looked into it, we wanted them, but we just could not afford them. I'd love to have them. So Marty, you can put that on your list.
I got it. And I apologize Wendy, but we're going to wait for the questions at the end. So as mentioned before, the purpose of the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative is to foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy with all of our communities throughout the state, and address any racial bias and disproportionate policing in communities of color or diversity. So, Sheriff, where do you stand on that statement? What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, of course, like I say, you know, the community is our business. We try to treat everyone the same, obviously, and right. You know, our demographics, of course, in Tioga County are quite different than Broome County or Chemung County or even Ithaca. Our demographics here, I mean, we have about a little over 51,000 people in the county. I think almost 49,500 are listed as white or Caucasian. So our demographics really don't swing the way of Chemung or Broome or Ithaca, you know, Tompkins County. So we've never had any issues that I know of. I've been here for 44 years. We've never had any issues with, you know, that type of stuff with, you know, the demographics the way they are. I mean, we always try. We have yearly training on it. Every year, every member of the department has to go through training for updates and that type of thing. So, you know, we've been very lucky. But again, the officers are trained too. I mean, so we've been very, very, very good with that kind of stuff.
Okay. Back to you, Jen.
Thank you. The next question, Sheriff, is concerning de-escalation techniques. How would your department handle crowd control or demonstrations?
Well, there's a perfect example that happened this past summer. We had demonstrations, Black Lives Matter demonstrations down at the courthouse, several hundred people. I know when the first demonstration came, I received a call from the chairwoman, Sabri. You know, what are we going to do? The mayor was all upset, wanted to show force. I've been involved in this when I was overseas with the military police overseas, and there was demonstrations. And the first thing happened over there was, you know, everybody lined up with riot gear and shields and, you know, looking for a fight. This time, when Marty Sabri called me, and I said, well, we're going to be ready, but don't worry about it. I had patrol cars that were on, they were at the courthouse of the village. I had patrol cars on the outskirts of the village, out of sight. And they could have responded within 15, 20, 30 seconds if there was an issue. But I think sometimes when somebody shows up that wants to fight, and then somebody else shows up and says, and is willing to fight, then you have a fight. We had 3 demonstrations this summer down at the courthouse. We had no issues. I kept my people back. That we were ready. One day I had my SWAT team. I have a 12-man SWAT team here. They were training, so I had them train a little later, and they just sort of hung around up here at the office in case they were needed. They've got all the gear and everything. They were all ready to go, but they didn't show up. So sometimes when you show up with force, you're going to get force. And so that's the, you know, and we go through de-escalation training. NYMER has a great course on it that we're doing for de-escalation. All my people are going to go through and be certified in those courses.
Thank you.
So I want to add,
Marty?
I'd like to add a comment to that because of what happened this summer. Because of the rumors. For me, I was really worried because I heard so many rumors. And then the sheriff kept, you know, saying, no, you know, it's rumors, don't pay attention to it. But then the community started calling. Then it was on Facebook. And I learned a little lesson there that fear can really be an enemy when there's no real enemy. And so then talking with the sheriff, he laid out his plan. He kept saying, you know, don't worry, don't get stressed. And so I think that's what happens in communities. Fear drives a lot of things. So I learned a lesson listening to the sheriff and watching him through that whole experience. I actually went to that demonstration. Saw a lot of friends there. It was very, very peaceful. I think I saw Wendy there. Very peaceful, very fine. But yet the fear that was going on throughout that day was just really interesting to kind of experience from the outside into me. So I thank you for that, Sheriff. And I learned a lesson, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you to address that, to show your example of your experience and thoughtful planning and respect for people to have their say, and let them have their say and not be aggressive about it. So anyway, that was my little speech. So now I have the question. So again, what kind of relationship do you think the sheriff department has with the community? And I think you ought to give us an example. You know, how your relationship?
Well, I think we've got a pretty good relationship. I mean, of course, there's going to be those that we do not have a good relationship with. I understand that. But I think we've got a good overall relationship. We do a lot of, for years, we haven't done in the last 2 years because of COVID and some monetary issues. But, I'll give you an example of the Christmas dinner and thing we did at Tioga Opportunities for, 15 years. It was open to the public. Anybody could come. We served about 300 dinners, no cost. We had presents for all the kids. All my people worked. We had Santa Claus and pictures. And I mean, that's just one thing. We do, a lot of other stuff through the county. Cops on Top, where the cops go down to Dunkin' Donuts and they're up on the roof looking for donations for one cause or for another. Toys for Tots. In November, I let all the males grow beards, but they have to pay to do it. And then we donate it to the Cancer Society. And this past year, I tried to get all the females to dye their hair pink for October for breast cancer, but that really didn't take off with them too much. But we do things all year round. We take kids up to the summer camp. I send a deputy up there for a week, free of charge. We pay for everything. We take those kids up from the schools. The schools gives us names. We usually take between 12 and 15 up there to Tioga Lake, where our sheriff's camp is. And we buy them everything, sleeping bags and everything. It doesn't cost them a penny. We provide transportation and everything. So we try to, do as much as we can. Of course, our hands are tied, sometimes. But we've done little things. We get calls, with the COVID thing going on. We get calls. It's my son's birthday and he loves police. We try to do a little parade by the house with the patrol cars and that type of thing. I've had people come here to give them a tour. Their kids love law enforcement. So, I mean, they come here, they meet deputies, they get to sit in the patrol cars. So we do as much as we can. Of course, as always, there's going to be that population that just doesn't care for law enforcement one way or the other. Either they just, have never had contact with law enforcement and don't care to, or have had a run-in with law enforcement one way or the other. So, but we try. We really try.
Next question, Sheriff. This is a tough one. What is your biggest struggle policing the county and running the jail?
I don't know if we have enough time. Talk about the jail. The jail's a costly thing. First, people don't understand. I have a 104 bed facility. That's the maximum number of inmates that I can have. The jail is mandated by the state that every sheriff in every county in the state has a jail. In doing so, they also have a commission of corrections out of Albany that govern all the jails and prisons in the state of New York. So any rules and regulations that the commissioners decide to put out, we have to conform to. And every year, there's one of the commissioners from the Commission of Corrections. They send somebody down to inspect us to make sure that we're following not only just our policies under accreditation, but on all the policies from the Commission of Corrections. And they spend probably about 3 days here, and they do the same thing. They look at all of our paperwork, they interview employees, and then they write a report and tell us what our deficiencies, if any, there are. So, I mean, that's an issue. I mean, I shouldn't say it's an issue. It keeps us on the straight and narrow, but it's a lot of work to make sure everything is working properly and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do and keeping them trained in what they're supposed to be doing. As far as the other side of the house, of course, I mean, you know, it's all budget stuff for me. You know, you never know what fuel is going to cost. We go through a lot of fuel. You know, training. I know a lot of the sheriffs in the county are complaining about being able to get people hired. They just don't want to be police officers in what's been going on in the last year or so. So that's been an issue in the jail and in our road patrol. I've got several retirements coming up. They're doing their time, their minimum amount of time for retirement, and then getting out. They don't want to do it anymore, and so it's hard to get people, good people. And of course, you know, budgets. You know, I think everybody here knows about budgets. You try to squeeze every penny you can to get the most out of it. So those are probably some of my biggest concerns.
Okay, so the next question, there's been a lot of talk this year, suggestions, well, because a lot of the issues that police respond to, people are having problems because of mental health. So mental health riding along, how do you, well, and so, you know, they've talked about maybe they should send a social worker out with your officers when there's a concern, but are your, like, what is your relationship with mental health, and are your officers trained to identify when there's, you know, obviously a mental health issue, someone's having a breakdown or whatever?
I see Lori's on. Lori, you want to go on some mental health calls with us? Probably. You can shake your head. No, that's okay. You know, those calls can be pretty dangerous. And you know, in that book that you showed that Governor Cuomo sent down, which I also got,
This one.
he talks about places that have hired mental health workers. So when a mental health call comes in on a 911 call, for instance, that they send 2 mental health workers out on it. Now, you know, I don't know what Lori's, you know, stance on that is. I haven't talked to her about it, but my guess is I don't think she wants to send a couple of her people out on a mental health call without, you know, some backup. We are trained as much as we can on those issues. We work very well with mental health. Anytime we needed anything, they've always been there for us. So we'll always be there for them. So we work, you know, we try. I think sending out 2 mental health workers. I read some of the reports that the governor did, and you know, unless the county wants to spend several $100 million to set up something like that, I don't know if you'd get anybody to do it to begin with. I mean, if you get a 200-pound man who's you know, gone a little crazy and is having some issues. I don't think two mental health workers want to deal with that because it can get pretty dangerous. There's been police officers killed at those types of calls. One in Ithaca that I can, during my tenure, was killed at a mental health call. So I think sending out mental health workers to these calls is not a good idea.
Okay. Back to you, Jenny.
Sheriff, how is your department's relationship between other policing agencies in Tioga County and the state?
Yeah, I have to say, I think, over the years, when I first started with the sheriff's office, it was always a big competition. Now there's more than enough work for everybody. We do work very well together. We work a lot of cases together. The state police, we work with them on cases. They work with us. I think we got an excellent relationship with, we've got basically two other police departments, the Weagle Police Department, Waverly Police Department, and the state police are basic law enforcement here. There's some smaller ones, the NCON guys, but there's more than enough work, and they realize that, and we do work pretty well together. There's usually no issues working a case or working together on something.
That's great.
So, that's a first set of questions, except that I do have one. Regarding your 911 center. Now, as I understand it, that's where all the emergency calls come into.
Yes.
And and I know that that is a very old system as far as communications and radios. And but how do you feel that the 911 center is doing, even with old equipment? And yes, we have a plan to get new as soon as we get money, but how do you feel that center works?
Well,
How do I explain that to people? Because I don't think they understand how that works.
Yeah, all emergency calls, all 911 calls come into my office for whatever it is. 911, you dial 911, the sheriff's office is answering it. Fire, EMS, law enforcement, with my dispatchers, God love them. They're there 24/7. There's no time off from 911. That is a tough job. And that's why, I like people to come here to the office and actually I take them down in there and see what they look at. Now, there's about 6 to 8 monitors they're looking at. It's a tough job. It's a really, really tough job. And they do a fantastic job at it. We answer the phones for the Weagle Police Department, the Waverly Police Department, the state police, and all the EMS and fire. They all come into here. So if you dial 911, you're getting us. You call for the Weagle Police Department, you're calling us. The Waverly Police Department, you're calling us. So people don't understand that that's what we're doing. And we did that to help those police departments in budget-wise, because years past, the Weagle Police Department and the Waverly Police Department had their own dispatchers. So they did away with all that, and it's all centered here now. It's a very expensive proposition because of technology is always moving forward. I've been working with Mike Simmons, our emergency management office, and with Marty and all the legislators on upgrading this. It's a very, very expensive proposition to get up to where, I don't want to say we want to be, where we should be. It's a very expensive proposition. Towers, radios. I think the last update just for Verizon 911 cost us about $500,000. Mm-hmm. And that was when they called us up. Verizon called us and said, we're going to be doing an upgrade in your 911. It's going to be $500,000. It was just shy of $500,000. And we said, well, I don't have that kind of money. They said, well, if you don't pass, you're not going to have 911. So you sort of, boxed in. What do you do? And the county came up with it and helped me out, and we went ahead with the upgrade. But that was about probably 7 years ago now. And technology is moving so fast forward that what we get today is no longer good, 6 months down the road. It's a very, but my dispatchers work at it. They do a fantastic job at it. And like I said, they're there. I have basically 12 dispatchers, and they're there 24/7 in rotating shifts. So they do a great job, and I'm afraid to lose any of them. And it's a hard job.
Yeah, it is. So, Drew, we're gonna switch it up a little. I'm gonna change the flow of things. So we're gonna give the participants a chance to ask questions now, and then if we have lots of time left over, then we'll move into the other areas of bail reform, discovery, and probation, that kind of thing. But we're going to give the folks a chance to ask questions specifically regarding the sheriff's department and policing. So,
Okay.
well, I don't know how we want to do this. You gave directions before.
Yeah, so if you have a question in the reactions, there should be the ability to raise your hand. Okay, we'll go that way.
Which way is that?
Well,
Okay,
I'm
there
on.
you go, Lynn.
I was going to hold back the question till later because I did send an email yesterday to Marty and the sheriff, and actually the Owego police chief regarding some training. Did you folks have an opportunity to review that video that I sent you?
Unfortunately not. COVID seems to take every breathing moment, so.
All right, it was a really good
Auschwitz piece.
video on police training being offered through the Auschwitz Institute. The fellow who presented is a BU grad, and the director, I believe, of the New York City office, Auschwitz Institute, has 4 around the world. I'm learning all this. But the training he went through, and I know the sheriff talked about training, and I'm not sure how you're feeling about additional training or if it's redundant to what this fellow was offering through the Auschwitz Institute. But he does, it's about a 40-minute segment. Did you get it, Sheriff?
I have not seen it, Lynn, but I will take a look at it tomorrow.
But you did get to, I mean, it came to you.
And I'm all about training. And
Well,
just so you know,
yeah,
so you know,
I
I have the statistics here. We did about 3,400 hours of training for my, everybody in my office last year, 2019.
Right. It sounded like
we keep track of all that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will take a look at it, and I will get back in touch with you.
It goes step by step through what the training is. And he talked about a 2-week course, and then toward the end, he, relationship, in my opinion, I think everybody's is everything pretty much. But because he was a local boy and had connections with BU, apparently Binghamton Police Department has going to be entering into this training that they're offering, as well as the BU police, which is no surprise. Yeah, but I not knowing what all you have, it sounded like, especially in light of the times that we have now. And that's why I did send a question to Marty. That's your nickname. I didn't realize that. About the implicit biases. And he also, you'll see an offering. He encouraged people take it to see, and I haven't yet, but through Harvard. And there's a website that I also sent you for if you're curious about yourself, I guess, to learn. And so they went through that with the police. But anyway, okay, that's the end of that question.
I will take a look at it tomorrow and I will get back in touch with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Wendy Post.
Okay.
Thank you. I just had a question on the chokeholds. When they came down and said, and I understand what you're saying, that they fall underneath another category that could be, you know, classified a little differently. Did they give any police officers anything as an alternative to restrain, like say somebody that was running from a domestic violence situation? Are they going to buy Bola wraps? Are they, go ahead, Sheriff.
Let me explain a couple of things. One to Wendy is, let me read what the policy says, okay, on chokeholds. All chokeholds are similar restraints that apply pressure to the throat or windpipe in a manner that may hinder breathing or reduce the intake of air of a subject are to be considered deadly physical force and may only be used in situations for which deadly physical force is justified under Article 35, New York State Penal Law, which is the use of deadly physical force. So with that being said, they don't tell you you can't do this or you can't do that. They're just saying you don't do it unless you're ready to kill somebody, basically, and you've got to be justified in doing so.
And the body cams would help with that, but
And the body cams would help, absolutely.
are those well, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Bola wraps, would they be something that would be funded by somebody to contain somebody in a mental health crisis or another situation where an aggressive chokehold might be the only thing that contains somebody?
The book that we've shown you that the governor sent down, he talks about what we have. Police officers use tasers, for instance.
Okay.
And pepper spray. They really don't want us to use those either. I mean, he gave the examples where I think it was New York City, they pepper sprayed a mental subject who was on a fire escape, ended up falling off the fire escape, hitting his head and dying. So now we shouldn't use pepper spray. That was just, that was the only, tasers, the same thing. I don't like tasers, never have liked tasers. When you tase somebody, if they're standing upright, they go stiff and they go right straight down. Wow. And I can see, some type of, head injury or like that. And I've never cared for tasers. There was a push here. Some of my staff wanted to go look at tasers and I said, no, I think there's too many injuries with tasers. My officers carry pepper spray. And they're trained on that. They get sprayed themselves with it for training, so they know what it's like. But that's all we carry. So anything else, I'm not sold on all this. I mean, they've come out with some crazy things. I'm just not really enthused on using any of them, to tell you the truth. Pepper spray seems to work great. They're trained 1 to 2 second bursts of pepper spray. And again, that's a use of force. We have to do all the paperwork the officers do, that it ends up, being sent to Albany for justification to use it. But as far as anything else, no.
Yeah, and the only other question I had was, you mentioned that some of your officers retired, they don't want to be police officers anymore. because just too much change and just too much going on. How many have you had retire in Tioga County since the governor started this police reform and initiative?
Well, let me see. Well, I've got one who retired last week. I got one that's retiring next month.
So several.
That's road patrol. Well, actually, two, one sergeant from the road patrol, one investigator, and one deputy actually going to be going here in the next 30 to 45 days.
3.
My jail, I've got, I had one retire last week. I got one that's going to be going next month that I could think off right off the top of my head. But you know, I talked to the deputies and they're just, there's the bail reform, it's pretty tough on them. I have a 104 bed facility. As of this morning, I had 40 inmates. And that's up. Last week ago or so, 10 days ago, I was down to 29. Now the courts are going to start opening back up soon, I hope. So I'm guessing my population will start climbing up. But right now it's, for a year, this is the highest we've had in a year. It's 40 inmates.
We have any more questions? We have a couple of school superintendents on the line. Oh, we got
No,
one.
I'm good. Thank you.
You got another question. Sabrina Slater
Oh, okay.
and Mr. Riggs, you're next.
And then Irina got her hand up.
I appreciate being able to be part of this and listening to the conversation. And I am just curious, I have 2 questions at this point in time. And I'm curious, Sheriff Howard, in the feedback that came back and sort of listening to the answers tonight, it seems you've been able to say in the affirmative, like y'all are doing a really great job and are definitely in compliance and everything there. And I'm curious if there are places where you believe that the department can grow, like places where you do think reform would be well received and in what ways. And then my second question is actually more directed probably towards Marty, and just curious because I don't know many of the people who are listening in, and I wonder as to just like if there's been some intentional invitation, perhaps. I know Marty just said that there are some superintendents on this call to engaging younger persons in our communities as to hearing their thoughts. So people who are still in school, perhaps, but even those who might be recent graduates and whatnot, and just curious if those folks who live in our communities have been engaged as well. Thank you.
Marty, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Okay, so the first part is when we first started this, I reached out to the mayors and supervisors and asked them to suggest a person from their community who might be interested in being on this call. And I did that so that we would have representation from the entire county. And then I thought of 2, actually I thought of 3, but he has a board of education meeting tonight. And I thought of a couple of schools supers, I call them supers, Eric Knowles, because I work with him almost every day of my life. And then Ryan Doherty, who we grew up to, or my son grew up with them. So yes, I know them personally. And I thought that they would be good because kids are very interested in trying to figure out what they're going to do when they grow up. And I know that they might be interested in how we handle things and maybe get connections. And we've had police officers in there on career days, that kind of thing. So I don't know if Eric or Ryan want to add something about interest from kids. Let me just say this though. There's a leadership group in Tioga County that's been going on for, I don't know, 15 years. And we call it Leadership Tioga. And one of the things that they do is they go to the jail and the sheriff takes them on a tour. And they go to the shooting range and they go walk through the whole thing. And they get a chance to really see what it's like. And it's eye-opening. I'm sure the sheriff would do that for any kid that wanted to, or a group of kids as well. Anyway, I'm offering your services. Ryan or Eric, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I can add a few things. So I'll give you a little background first. So I'm in my 11th year as a superintendent at North Valley. Prior to that, I was a high school principal for 6 years. So I've worked with the sheriff's department for quite a long time on any number of issues. So I think the first thing I would say is that they have always been extraordinarily responsive, professional, and they've always made sure through all the time that I've worked on things with them that, you know, they recognize that their job isn't to crush kids. Their job is to, is to teach when they step into a school, and they always confer with us and before we do anything. And it's been a very good relationship, and they're very, very good in working with kids. But I think one of the other things that overall that time that they've done that I've always been very appreciative of is they don't just show up when something's happening. There are countless times where they'll come to the school and just say, hey, can we just walk around and just make ourselves seen and make sure that the kids are familiar with us and recognize that we're part of the community and we want to be a valuable part of the community. And the response with our kids has always been tremendous as far as the deputies coming in and maybe just having a cup of coffee, maybe just stopping in the cafeteria and saying hi to people. On top of that, they've come in and they've done things. They've given talks to students and teachers and tried to help us and educate us so that we can be better partners. And I know one of my teachers is on here too, one of my junior high teachers who I'm glad to see him here. And we've just had a really positive relationship with the department. And again, they've always been very professional and they always have the best interest of the students in mind. So I think that has fostered across 2 districts over almost 2 decades, some good relationships. And I know some of my former students are currently deputies with the department. So I think that relationship has been very sound, and I have every expectation that that's going to continue.
Sabrina, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really appreciated those responses. I think just to offer maybe a level of clarity to what I was inquiring about was also meaning literally in this venue, if like it seems that there's nobody who's under a certain age who's on this call. And I just have found in my own life that the perspective that people offer from different locations in life is incredibly valuable. And so I was just sort of observing that we don't seem to have some younger voices present here, and wanting to be curious about that, especially in this moment where Zoom is the way that's it actually an opportunity probably for more folks to be able to gather when weather might not be the most hospitable, right? Or where it might be hard to get a ride sometimes for some of the folks who are a bit younger among us. Not to say that there's not a good, healthy relationship there. I've even had the opportunity to see an officer essentially who is like off hours being at the schools and engaging, and it being very, very good relationship. But also just wondering, because I've seen some of the amazing students in our region be involved, and knowing that they have insights and opinions to offer that aren't always as easily seen with folks who are
Thank
older.
you. And I'm
Sabrina, can I pop in? Can I pop in for a second? Eric Knowles. How are you? I haven't seen you in ages. It's good questions, right? Hey, this came up the other day, and it's just a good point. We just did this at Waverly, and we said the same thing. We looked at our pictures, and we all looked alike. So it was great because it was the pastor in Waverly who did the same thing. She's like, "Aren't you in charge of a school or something?" I said, "Yeah. Can you get that survey to the kids?" So we gave the survey for the Waverly survey to our juniors and seniors. So that may not work for this, you know what I mean, as we're trying to do this one, but potentially moving forward to get the superintendents for the county involved, to get those 16, 17, 18-year-olds and just kind of get a bit of that perspective. Like it or not, we're going to turn this place over to them pretty soon. And just to kind of get that idea. And also to, I've worked with some of the sheriff's people when I was at Spencer Vedette for 7 years. I mean, I had the opportunity to work with Timmy Jewell and the Spencer crowd, and they were always phenomenal, doing a lot of stuff with the kids. But I think, I think that piece of just getting their voice in there and having them think about that, and also recruiting some of our top kids to go into law enforcement, I think is something we're going to really have to do, because I hear the chief say the same thing that the sheriff said, that it's hard to find, high quality young folks right now that want to go into law enforcement, because it's like teaching was a few years ago, just getting beat up every time you turn on a television. So, I mean, who wants to sign up for that? But yeah, that could be an opportunity. I'm sure the superintendents, Marty, would help out dispensing a survey to our high school kids.
That'd be a good plan moving forward.
And we have, in the past, we've been invited to some of the like career days at the schools and stuff. And we have a whole display that we set up, and we send down, our deputies or dispatchers or both to talk to kids, and they stop by, and we send down our evidence vehicle along with our evidence tech to talk to them about the other side of, sort of forensics and that type of thing. We've done several of those. I've gone to several schools, talked to, third and fourth graders, but we love the schools, Ryan, Eric, we talked, the last school shooting, was terrible. I told my deputies, I want you to, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, stop into a school, stop into the main office, tell them you're there, tell them you're not there for any reason other than just to walk through the hallway. If they, teacher wants to walk with them, a principal, feel free. If you're asked to leave, which we haven't, then leave. But we've been very well received at all the schools, and the deputies, stop in. Because I live in the village of Owego, I stop at the Owego school in the morning when all the buses are coming in and all the kids are filing in. I'm standing out there with the superintendent and the principals and stuff, talking, and the kids are, saying hello and seeing me. So we try to get out, but again, it's a lot of, as everybody here has a job to do, time restraints are a big deal. Some days my deputies can go to hit every school in the county, and some days they can't get near them. They're so busy running around. But as far as the community, we love the community. We like to be out there, and we like to have a great relationship with them. A lot of our, our Facebook page, we've solved, I don't know how many crimes because of the public reaching back out to us when there's something. They've reached out to us and told us, so I know that person in that picture, or, giving us tips. So, we love the public. And Sabrina, part of your thing was about training. I love training. That was one, like I said, in 2019, I don't have statistics for 20 yet, In 2019, we did 3,400 hours of training. I love to send my people to training. We almost have to send them to keep them up on top of everything. So any training that comes up, and that's Lynn, we're going to take a look at Lynn's thing. I'm open to any training that's beneficial to us and the residents of the county.
So would you say then that, because the question that I lifted was really like, are there any places where that you see as opportunities to grow or places that need reform? Are you essentially offering just the places that need reform are just continued opportunities for training, or are there any specific areas where you've seen, this is something where we could really grow, or this is something where something else needs to be developed? Perhaps even naming like, well, there's not unlimited funds, but if there were unlimited funds, this is really where I think some reform should be.
I think the de-escalation training is probably the main thing on my list right now, is to get all my people trained in that. It seems to be a pretty hot topic with residents. And so that's probably my biggest thing right now on my training list, is the de-escalation and bias training, and get that taken care of and get everybody in line with that. And everybody has to be trained. I even go to the training that we have. I'm not from the outside. I got to be there too. So, and, if you have one officer that's trained and one that's not, it can cause problems when you get to a situation. So we want everybody on the same page. So over time, it's going to take us a little time to get it done. But we want to get those trainings done. And right now, the de-escalation training is one of my big things.
Thank you. And if I may, just one follow up to that, is it a time piece? Like you said de-escalation and anti-bias training or awareness of it would be the two places really where you're hoping to get everyone on board to be trained. Are the pieces that are challenging, is it time, is it money, or is there pushback within from folks being like, I don't need this? Or
no pushback. No pushback from the deputies. The deputy, all my deputies, all the men and women that work for me are really good. When I bring up training or they bring up training, we're all forward. Probably the biggest problem we have, of course, because we work 3 shifts. I got deputies and corrections officers working, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and trying to get the training in on their days off, or, sometime. That's probably the biggest issue we have with getting everybody trained. So I'm hoping, it's probably going to take us maybe 3 or 4 months at least to get everybody trained and on the same page with the training. I'm hoping. And the expense really is negligible, because NYMER has some great classes and some great training out there, and it's free. It's just time, and that's what it is, mostly time.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Riggs.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to participate in this. This is very enlightening, and I appreciate the opportunity to hear this information. But I have 2 short questions, or maybe the answers might be long, but the first one was, I'd like you to elaborate on the impact of this new bail reform and how that's impacted your department, and maybe you can, specifically what it really means. The other thing is, you mentioned earlier that it was very expensive to store the data for the body cams, and I'm very surprised to hear that. Is that an information technology cost, or is that more of a cataloging of the information? Why is the storage of the data so expensive? What drives the cost on that?
It's the information technology part of it. They tell us that we got to keep, if we use body cameras, we got to keep the information for, I think it's a year or 18 months. So it's a lot of data to be stored. I don't have all the technicals on it, but I
can say I can speak a little to that if you'd like, Sheriff.
Go ahead, Drew.
So yeah, as the Deputy County IT Director, my camera should turn on here in just a second. There we go. Yeah, the cost is the monthly subscription price for the storage servers themselves. Because this type of storage is so dynamic, it's generally done in the cloud rather than physical storage that the county would own, which makes it more flexible and more cost effective, but there's still a continuous monthly subscription price for, what is generally terabytes of data. And because of the storage requirements and because of the popularity of storage right at the moment, it's exorbitantly expensive. Will that paradigm change? Probably. In 2 to 5 years, storage prices will start to come down, and these products will become more affordable. But right now, it's the monthly subscription cost. It's a recurring fee that you never get away from.
You can't buy your own hardware. It's not effective to buy your own hardware and store it offline.
No,
not like that. That doesn't work.
No, okay. And with the retention requirements that the sheriff mentioned from New York State Archives, we got to hold the files for quite a long time.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I think he had a question about bail reform. How has it affected you, Sheriff?
Oh, bail reform. I think is the district attorney still on? I don't know if he's still on or not. The bail reform came out. There's a whole list of charges that we're obligated to give appearance tickets for. So it's, I hate to even say it, but it's the catch and release program. We stop somebody, and I'll give you an example. We had a stolen skid steer here a couple months ago, I believe out of Candor. We recovered it about a month later, arrested the subject. It's a $40,000 machine. We gave him an appearance ticket and told him we went home. So it's pretty frustrating on our part when you work a month. My investigators working a month on a case, catch the person, and to give them an appearance ticket and tell them to go to court in 4 to 6 weeks. It's kind of especially for me, I've been around for so long. Years ago, you took them before the judge, and and the judge may release them, but the judge will put them in jail too. But now the judge's hands are tied. They have to follow the rules and regulations of bail reform just as much as we do. So it can be pretty frustrating. Like I said, I have a 104 bed facility and I got 40 inmates right now, and that's a high. We were down to, I think, 27 the last few months, 28. Where I'm usually running an average of 80 to 90 every month. But the biggest part is, it's not that I want to fill my jail up. It's the fact that all the work that goes into a case, and tell you, the victims don't like it. They're really upset about it. The easiest way I explain bail reform to people is you come home during the day, you go to work in the morning, you come home at lunchtime and your front door's been kicked in. Everything in your house has been stolen, your computers, your jewelry, your money, TVs, whatever. You report it to the police, we take a report. You go back to work, we call you an hour later and say, hey, we caught a guy and we've got all your stuff. And you said, great, what's his name? And we give him your name and you say, he's my next door neighbor. You go home at 5 o'clock and there's your neighbor sitting in the lawn chair looking at you. because we have to give them an appearance ticket and send them home. Now, how safe are you going to feel? And by the way, we're going to keep all the stuff that we recovered from your house for the next 6 months or so until it comes to trial. You're not getting it back. So it's pretty frustrating for the victims, not just for the police, but mostly for the victims. They're a victim of a crime, and then the suspect is. I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Are you seeing an impact on crime? The amount of crime?
No, I mean, you know, not really, no. I mean, crime hasn't had an uptick or anything like that because of it. I mean, there's been a couple people we've arrested, you know, a couple different times, but nothing, you know, really serious, nothing dramatic. The crime has basically pretty much stayed, you know, the crime rate has pretty much stayed the same. I don't think we've had any huge increase in it because of the bail reform.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Drew, I think Lynn's got a question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have Irina in front of her, and then Lynn, you'll be next.
Okay, okay.
Your mic should be open, Irina.
Hi, thank you. My question kind of tags off of Lynn, so that kind of works out. I just wanted to thank the sheriff and the chairwoman especially for having this dialogue. I had a couple questions that I'll tie together on a larger theme. Earlier, people had mentioned, both Marty and Sheriff Howard, that relationship building is important and that they really care about building relationships with the community. And Chairwoman Sauerbrei also mentioned the power of misinformation and fear, particularly online, particularly related to the Black Lives Matter protests over the summer. And so my question is, I'm one of the co-founders of A We Go for Equality that was in charge of the protests for over 100 days this summer, which remained completely peaceful, no problems to the community. My question is, if you are concerned about relationships with aspects of the community that perhaps feel unheard, or that you want to grow a positive relationship with that part of the community, how come nobody came down to participate with us and open a dialogue? How come there was no official statement or reaching out from legislation? We were there for 100 days. It's not like there was not an invitation to have a dialogue or to dispel that fear by having one. And Sabrina mentioned about having engagement, particularly with younger community members who have concerns and are passionate about this. And often, at least in my experience working with them over the summer, it feels like there's a desire for engagement, but only of a certain kind and only from a certain kind of person. And I feel like a little bit would have gone a long way to encourage engagement and make people feel heard and seen, and to also dispel those rumors and to assuage those fears. And none of it ever happened. And this is my first opportunity to ask why directly.
Let me back you up just a minute. What kind of, you said certain kind of person and a certain kind of, you know, what do you mean by certain kind of person?
By a certain kind of person, I mean someone respectfully who might be less critical of law enforcement or current policies. I know it's been a contentious summer, and I know there are a lot of heated opinions on the matter, especially following the murder of George Floyd. And I get the impression, our group got the impression that there wasn't really a desire to engage with people like us who shared the opinions that we have. And there was a lot of assumption there. So that's just the impression I have. Like,
Well, wait a minute now. The people like you, as you put it.
Yeah.
And I think I kind of explained this. You were peaceful.
Yes.
Right. What
Correct.
was there a reason for us to be there?
Yes, according to
what
you.
Would the reason be?
Building a relationship with a part of the community that really could use some support from law enforcement.
See, I don't feel that you're right in that. Because same thing that's starting to happen here is we're going to start going back and forth. You know, a certain person. I believe you want to demonstrate, you want to speak out, feel free. Just do it peacefully, safely. I have no issues whatsoever. And if you do, then there is no reason for me to even be there.
But that you're kind of missing my point respectfully. Like, I don't want to go back and forth with you, but the purpose of demonstrating was to engage with police and get feedback from local legislation. And I understand that the scale of this is much smaller for our community, but is connected to a larger framework. And part of the reason for the demonstrations is action between officers and people with these concerns. So while
Can I respond, Sheriff? Let me just say something here. So as I told you, when they had the service in the park, I actually, and I can't remember his name, and I'm sorry, the young man who created that experience in the park and remembering George Floyd, I actually spoke with him.
Oh, you mean the vigil? The vigil that was,
yeah.
I know who you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, so I spoke with this young man and he told me all about it. And so I kind of gave him advice and I said, do this and do that. And I said, there's rumors. He says they're not true. So we had an ongoing conversation, but let me tell you, I saw you guys out there. I went by you every single day, because you were right there on my way home.
I'm sure you did.
But so it works both ways. I had no idea that you wanted to talk to me, and I'm sure the sheriff wouldn't have any idea. Like, it works both ways. I saw you. I thought you were doing a demonstration of your rights and to the public. But I welcome you. I welcome you. If you want to talk about issues, I'm here. You can make an appointment. We can meet with our masks on. You know, I'm completely open. I have a very diverse family. And I have 4 kids, and they're from the left and they're from the right. And being in the middle is a little tough, let me tell you. But you have to learn to work together, and you have to learn to talk. And sometimes it's scary. So let me just put it back on you, and respectfully to you. You guys want to talk about it? Come in and talk. We'll talk.
So just for some clarity, we should have made an appointment with you. The obvious desire to have a dialogue for 100 days wasn't an invitation.
No, I had no clue that you wanted to say anything to me. I saw you. I thought it was for the public.
Okay.
Was I aware? Yes, I was very aware of what you were saying.
I got to say, just one other thing is, I went by you because I live in the village. I went by a lot of times, and I think, the sign demilitarize, defund the police really isn't a great invitation for the police to come by and have dialogue, because we're going to be pretty defensive about all that. But I mean, if you want to come up here, you want to call me, you want to meet, you want to come up here and see my office and sit down with me, feel free. Give me a call.
All right.
So anyway, next time I'll know, I guess.
Sure.
And you could wave. Of course, you don't know who I am, so I mean, you could have waved me over there. So that's interesting to know. I just had no idea that I had no idea that you guys wanted to really talk about issues. I know that Mayor Beretta did come over and speak with you because we talked about it. I don't know if it was you personally.
It wasn't me personally, but he did speak to one of us, yes.
Yeah, I know he came over and because he told me all about it, so anyway.
Okay, I appreciate both of your responses. Thank you.
Okay, Lynn.
Hey. I just want to thank Irene for speaking up. I think what she had to say was of value and had some merit without going in because it's getting late. And I did go by, and I didn't give the finger. I gave a thumbs up every time, and I beeped. Okay. So there are people in this community, and I never got there and talked, but I meant to, but I didn't get there. While I'm and then I do have a couple questions for Marty. Since I saw Jack RP here, I have to say something funny because I'm old, and the older I get, the more I say what's on my mind. And the minute I saw him, I thought, oh, I'm going to get to tell him that because I moved back here from Colorado about a year and a half ago. So the news people were new to me, it was like adjusting when you move to a different area. You have to get used to the new, the new way of doing things. But the first time I saw you, Jack, and continuously, have you heard this, that you look like a young Frank Sinatra? Has anyone ever said that to you? No, he can't talk. Anyway, that's all. That's because you do, in my opinion. On a lighter note, to lighten things up. So, but Marty, just going back a couple, I wasn't sure what to expect from this. And I'm open, trying to be open. I guess I would hope that we would get, and there may well be a plan to give us, I guess I thought I might hear some plan that you're putting forward, and I may have misunderstood. It sounded like you said we came up with what we're going to propose to the governor in September, but maybe you're still modifying it and you wanted more input, which is why you're having this meeting, to get more input, to have more consideration.
So let me answer that first part before.
Yeah.
So the plan was to hear from the community by way of survey, written survey.
Yep.
And a conversation. So then what we do is we take all that information, we listen to you, and then we get our people together, and then we put the plan together, and then we put it out for public comment.
Okay.
That will be posted on our website.
Good deal.
And then we consider things that maybe we missed. For instance, like talking to the people that were demonstrating. You learn something every day. So whatever we miss, and then we'll put a plan together. So then we have to give it to the legislature, and they have to approve it or whatever, and then we send it to the governor.
Okay. All right. The other thought I had, and I thought you might address this, but if it isn't, it may have already been considered, but I would propose that you consider, if not, an ongoing, some type of citizen review, civilian review committee that would meet quarterly or something for these kinds of conversations, and not just to have this one, because you need to have community involvement. But and I'm new to the community. You may already have, I know you have monthly legislative meetings, but have you considered setting up a citizen review? That sounds a little advisory, for input, an ongoing dialogue with the police department.
We have not discussed that to date. No.
Oh, you haven't yet discussed that idea amongst yourselves?
Right.
Oh, well, I guess I would hope you would have some discussion about that. And
let me explain that to you a little bit. So, so this was a wild summer. In the meantime, we're all dealing with COVID.
Right.
And I don't think people understand how all-encompassing this COVID is for county government. But I won't go into that right now. It's 24/7. So then the governor comes, really has something to say, and he makes a decision that applies to the entire state. And I can tell you that we are not all the same. Every community is different. Every city is different.
Yep. And
so, to be honest with you, I really feel confident that, we're not perfect, but we have across the county good policing. I think they're fair. So that's where I was coming from. So, an annual review, quite frankly, I don't know who's going to do that. Because people don't understand how limited our resources are. But, that doesn't mean it wouldn't happen. It could happen. But that was not brought up at this point, but we will certainly discuss it now. We will bring that up because that's what this meeting is for, is to get input from the community and get ideas for a plan, and that very well could be part of a plan.
Okay,
However, I think that should be community driven,
okay,
not by the legislature.
okay.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yep, thanks. That's it.
Okay. So we are at 8:30. Oh, Jack, we have to give Jack a chance to ask a question. You're the last one. Can we do that, Drew?
That's good. I have to make the 11 anyway, so I really have to get out of here. But back to the topic of training, you mentioned, Sheriff Howard, that you are not in support of sending mental health professionals out with deputies on a call because of the dangers, which is what many activists have called for. As an alternative, would you support more extensive training for your deputies to have some of the same capabilities that those professionals would have? And that's going a little bit further than de-escalation, so not necessarily preventing conflict, but actually, understanding what's going on with someone from a mental health standpoint before acting on whatever the situation may be.
Okay, Jack. First, I'm against sending mental health workers out by themselves. Okay. There's a couple. There are a couple programs. One's called, believe it or not, Cahoots, and it's out west, I think in Oregon or someplace, where they said that's what they do. They send mental health workers, no law enforcement with them. They just send mental health workers. I'm against that. I have no problem with a couple of my deputies going to a mental health call and having a mental health person with them. I don't know if Lori would agree with me. I think it can be a dangerous situation sometimes. A lot of times it's not, but it's, again, Jack, as far as training, as I said before, I'm all about training. I have no problem. If we can get my people to training, be it mental health training, be it, whatever type of training, I'm all for training. I think it's a great tool. It helps us, if we, get accused of something, we get sued or whatever. If we have the training in it, we're that much better off. So I'm not adverse to that. Now, I don't know if, Lori's going to want me to swing by and pick up her to take her out to a mental health call and help wrestle down somebody, or, try to talk them into getting in the car to go to the hospital. But I mean, I'm open to anything, if it works right, and it works okay and safely, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Lori, your mic's on, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, I think that the Sheriff's Department does a wonderful job with our population that we work with. We are available 24/7 on call. Many times the sheriffs call us if they need some help in a situation, and we do participate that way. I've heard of other counties actually taking an iPad and doing something similar to a Zoom call. So, that might be an option versus somebody riding along. I have a lot of concerns about a social worker riding along to a call that could be potentially violent. We certainly don't have that training, but we do have a lot of skills that could assist police in other ways.
And they have many times.
Yeah.
Well, we are at the 8:30 mark, and we promised we would not go over our time limit. So I want to thank every single person on this call. We may not all agree the same, but your input is so absolutely valuable. And we will take all of this information and put it together and help create the plan. It does have to be in the Department of Budget by April 1st, but this is going to go out the door by March, I promise, because there's a lot of other things that we've got to do. And I will tell you that they're as equally important as this. We have a lot of major projects that we're working on. And then we have to get everybody in this county vaccinated so that we can get our lives back and really get back to normal life. So thank you everyone for being on the call. I appreciate it. And stay tuned. We stay tuned to the local media, talking about what comes next, and when our plan is put together, it will be posted on our website and you can go there and then you will be able to make comments when it is completed. Okay? Thank you.